Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechta Zevachim, daf Ayin Daled. We're going to begin on Ayin Daled about Aleph, 4 lines from the top. So we were learning in this parak of Kol Zevachim that when you have a bunch of karbanos, which are good karbanos, mixed together with even one, let's say, for example, Chatas Shemesu Ba'aleha, in which the owner died before the carbon chatas was brought, in which the din is, that's one of the 5 situations of chatas mesos, that we have the animal die. So now that it's all mixed together, even if it's a huge ratio, we say it's never batal. And we ask the kasha a couple dafim and go, why don't we say batal barov? So we say davar shebeminyan, or maybe bali chayim are a davar chashiv. Then we talked about, why don't we say kol parish meruba parish, where choshesh because of kavua, that maybe you'll just end up taking it. And on that we say it's mechsa, even though it's not 50-50. And then we brought down the machlokas of whether bali chayim or nidchin. That is it possible if you have an animal which was good, it was nidcha, because b'chois venira, even while it's alive. So we ended up saying that, of course, it's a machlokas. And in fact, we ended with the interesting sheet of Hanan HaMitzri that says that when it comes to even an animal that's already shechted, or on Yom Kippur, even the dam, which is for the sa'ir, if the other animal, the scapegoat, died, so the din is that you only have to bring one, you don't have to bring another 2, because he holds that even when it comes to after shchita, this is not pushed off. Okay, Omer Rav Nachman, Omer Rabbi, Omer Rav. Tabah Shovitz Chachavim. So you have this ring that belongs to some form of idol worship. This Arvu B'Meya Tabois, and it got mixed up. Now, generally speaking, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, it's not batal. So here we have a problem with all these rings that are mixed up with this idol. The naful achas mehen liyam hagadol. Now one of them actually fell into the yam hagadol, which will cause, it's going to be gone, right? It's swallowed up by a shark or whatever it is. So hutter kuon. So it's an interesting chiddush that once one of them just happened to have fallen out, so what do we say? A tremendous kula. We say that the one that fell is the one that was the usher one, which is a great heter. So it needs to be Ravel or Rav Nachman. So he says, well, afil achas b'revu yamusu kuon. We just mentioned in our Mishnah that if you have one animal mixed in with thousands of others, so we have to kill them all. So amai, name of the maces surah mace. Why don't we just take one out, or let one leave, let it be killed, and we'll say that's the chatas. That was the problematic one. Why don't we say the same thing? What almost sounds like we're being more lenient when it comes to Avodah Zarah. Amay Rav di Aimer Karbi Eliezer, because he holds like the shita of Rabbi Eliezer did not. Rabbi Eliezer Omer im karav haroi shel ech mehen yikruvu kol harashim kulan. And we had this before, that he said that if you are makriv the rosh of one of them, then you can be makriv all of them. And we said this again as a kasha. Apparently, that demonstrates that Bali Chaim are not nidchin. So anyway, that's the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. Says Rashi, umastisani. So, and we did learn like this. Okay, so again, Rabbi Eliezer im kira b'mastisani alma talina isura b'hai the azal. So again, that seems to be like the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer, that statement regarding the Avodah Zarah. V'ha'omer Rabbi Eliezer hit the Rabbi Eliezer el shnayim el echad loy. Says Rashi, l'kaman bepirkin do hit the Rabbi Eliezer hakreves hanaystrim el shnayim 2. You could be makrib two at a time, because while it's for sure that at least one of them while you're doing it is proper. There was only one animal which had a balmum. You could always say, well, since out of these two, this one can't be asur, because out of the two, there's only one that was a balmum. So then, the other one probably is also mutter, and that's why you can do both of them. And therefore, you can't just do one at a time. So this whole heter is davka 2 and a 2, not 1. So you're right. So actually, the whole point was take 2, right? So okay, fine. Don't take one of the animals. Take 2, right? And therefore, you could then say, well, one of them was definitely beheter. Okay. Question 5. Omer Rav Nachman Tabashel Kachavim Shis Arv B'Mea Tabois V'Nafel Achs Mehem Liyama Gadol. So he said Hutter Kuon. V'Reish Lakish Omer Ki Agad B'Chavya Shel Truma. Okay, I guess this we didn't see. For some reason, I wrote that this was question 5. Okay, well, we didn't get to that yet. All right. Okay, we're going to see that on Almond Base. So, I jumped the gun. But at least that's where that sugi is. So, Morav. Tabashim is Kachavim Shisabim B'Mea Tabois. Again, if you have a ring of Avodah, it's mixed in with another 100. You Pirshu Arbayim Lomakim Echad. You separated 40 in one place. So, Shishim Lomakim Acher. And 60 in another place. So Pirsha Achas Mi Arbayim Eno Asuros. The 1 out of 40 is not Asur. Achas Meshishim is Asuros. So let's look at Rashi. V'nis Arba Bacheros. So they got mixed up with others. And an Asaros V'kul Mafar Shlav Azal. So it's like, how does that make sense? Why is the 1 in 40 better than 1 in 60? So Maishna Achas Mi Arbayim Deloi Demini Isur Baruba, because we'll say that the Isur is more, because you need maybe Batul B'Shishim. So if that's the case, Demini Isur Baruba Isa. So Achas B'Shishim Nam Demini Isur Baruba Isa, right? So the prohibited ring is also in there as well. So what exactly is the difference? If you separated 40 into one place, ain't asuros. They're not going to be asur. Rather, the isur is probably in the 60. We're going to assume that the shishim makam echad asuros. So since you took out the minority of them, so if there's this one ring, so the point here is that probably going to the odds, you probably didn't take that one out. So therefore, those 40 are mutter. However, out of the 60, then the ring is probably in there. So that's the logic. Okay, we used to come into Shmuel, and we're going to focus on Shmuel in a moment. That when it was said in front of Shmuel, Omerlei, Hana Chavadas Kachavim, Shesveika, V'sveika asura ad soifa oilam. Now, when it comes to Avodah Zarah, we are extremely strict, and even when we're dealing with the sveika, we're always going to be very strict when it comes to that. That's what Shmuel says, that we are exceedingly strict when it comes to Avodah Zarah. So again, when it comes to the 60, it's asur because, as Rashi says, Damrin and Isur b'shishim Isa. It's probably in the 60. Avol kinis arvu bacheros havihu sveika shovas chachavim. So if it's mixed up again, it's a sveika. It's a suffix that was in there. Now it's more that are in there creates another suffix. Says Rashi, kivan di Isur baruba Isa havikulhu savik avodas kachavim. So he said when it comes to the 60, it doesn't make any difference. It's a suffix by avodas kachavim, and we do not allow. So in Rashi says hanach avodas kachavim mil hakel b'sveik sveika kishari surin. Even though maybe by sveik sveika we're lenient, we're not going to be lenient by avodah zara. I feel pirshu or boy mumakam echad asuros. He says no. Even if the 40 were separated, according to him, even those are usher. Okay. So meisvei. Savik avodas kachavim asura. We know that savik avodas zara is usher. It says, however, sveik sveika muteris. Now that's a kasha. We just said by sveik sveika, according to Shmuel, it's usher. But we hold the sveik sveika as mutter even by avodas zara. Ketzad. What is the case? So koshel avodas kachavim. We have a cup which is mamish used for idol worship, which is a big no-no. Shenafel oitzer moli kaisais, and it fell into a storehouse, like a warehouse filled with cups. So it's definitely one to against many. It doesn't matter. Kulan asurin. They're all aser because it's a suffix of a zara. Pirish echad mehen li'rebuah mutarin. If one of them was separated to 1,000 or 10,000, so we say that those are mutter, because now we have a sveik sveika, right? It was a suffix by this, and now it's an additional suffix. Anyway, this is the kasha. How could Shmuel say sveik sveika surah ad soifa oilam when we see clearly it says sveik sveika is mutaris? So the answer is tanahi. It's a machokas tanayim. How we deal with the stringencies of avodah zara. The Stanya Yehuda Omer Rimoini Badan, which we mentioned about the things which are davar choshev, the 6 things, or maybe the 7. So one was the Rimoini Badan, these pomegranates from this location, as Rashi says again, as Echad Meshisha Davarim Shein B'Teilin Hein Hilka Chasur B'Chol Shehu. Even the smallest amount is aser because it's a davar choshev. It's a davar choshev. So therefore, Rimoni Bana is asur and b'chol shehu. Ketzad. What's the case of that? So naval echad mehen. Let's say one of the Rimoni Badan fell with toich ribua miribulu ribua 10,000s, and then those into others asurin, which is mashmi even like a sveik it's asur. According to that, it doesn't make any difference. That's what it sounds like. Says. However, Rav Shimon ben Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rav Shimon, he says that actually the name of Rav Shimon, Ribu Asurin. If we're dealing with the first suffix, one suffix, it's Asur. And Ribu Lishloisha, which is basically a Sveik Sveika, Mishloisha Lamakam Acher Mutter. So, again, according to him, he holds that Ataka is a Sveik Sveika, is Mutter. Now, the interesting thing is, he says the name of Shmuel here. Shmuel said that that it is sorry, he said the name of Rav Shimon. My apologies. So anyway, but we see machlokas when it comes to avodah zara whether or not sveik is aser. Let's look at this Rashi. Rebuah harishon sha iser atzmo nafal sham aser. Where the iser originally fell, that's aser because that's a suffix. Of a pirish echad, let's say one of them separated ma'isa rebuah will gilmul remoinim to even 3. Umin a shloisha pirish echad l'makoim acher mutter afa gimel emsoim. The middle ones are also okay. The sveik a bottle. Okay. Basically, it fell, and then one of them fell into like a few, and then it was removed. So now you have this pile is a suffix, and this pile is a sveika. This one's a suffix. That's a sveik. If it's a sveika, was it removed or not? The isser. So according to this shita, he holds sveika's mutter. Those 3, okay, because the one of them was removed from the 3. Shmuel di'amer kaman. Now Shmuel's shita, who does he hold like? Now Ik Rabbi Yehuda, if he holds like this shita, Rabbi Yehuda, who apparently says that this is what it sounds like. So afil b'shari surin aser. Now Rav Shimon, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he does sound a lot like the shita of Shmuel, but the problem is Shmuel says hanach avodas kachavim. So only by idol worship we say sveik is aser. This is mashma by shari surin is also, we say, a sfeik sfeika is aser. And of course, Rav Shimon, I feel be able to chachamim nami shari. So I mean, he certainly doesn't hold like Rav Shimon. The chitim shani li Rav Shimon ben avos chachavim mashari surin. Maybe you could actually say 1 second. Maybe he does hold like Rav Shimon. Maybe the only time Rav Shimon says that a sfeik sfeika is mutter is only because it's shari surin. However, maybe he will agree to Shmuel when it comes to avos chachavim that by sfeik sfeika it's aser. Elohadasanya. Safik of a skachavim asura. Sfeik of a safik sveika muteris mani. Who's that like? Lo, if that's how we're saying it. Loi Rabbi Huda v'lo Rav Shimon. So it's not like Rabbi Huda because Rabbi Huda says the sveika is aser, and it can't be like Rav Shimon because it would. We were going to maybe think it was like Rav Shimon, but now we're saying Rav Shimon makes a distinction between Shari Surin and Avos Kachavim, that when it comes to idol worship, Sfeik is Aser, so who holds like that? Well, Rav Shimon. Really, we'll stick to Rav Shimon. He agrees with him with one, and disagrees with him in one. Okay. So what does that mean? So he agrees... Rav Shimon, Rav Shimon. However, Shmuel holds like Rabbi Yehuda regarding this case, right? That a sfeik sfeika is aser by avodah zara, but he disagrees when it comes to shari surin. By shari surin, he disagrees, right? Because by shari surin, he holds. Shmuel will say that a sfeik sfeika is mutter. Okay, so actually Shmuel is now we're saying is like the middle ground, right? Again, because he only says, and you can't disagree with the language of Shmuel. He says Hanach levodas kachavim, so he makes a distinction between levodas kachavim and shari surin. So it's possible, therefore, that Rabbi Yehuda says afil b'shari surin aser. So there and that's what we're going to stick with. And when it says the case of sfeik avodas kachavim asura of sfeik sfeika muteres, that sfeik sfeika is mutter. So let's get this down. So it says that sfeik sfeika is mutter. So that could be like the shita of let's get the words right. So again, what are we saying like this? So Oilam Rav Shimon. The Shmuel, however, Shmuel will hold like Rabbi Yehuda. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? He says that Nafal Echem Asurin, right? Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, he holds that even when it comes to a sfeik sfeika, that's what he said. By a sfeik sfeika, even by shari surin, it's aser, right? That's what he said. Ikar Yehuda feel b'shari surin aser, but Shmuel doesn't hold like that. He holds only by avodas kachavim as sfeik sfeika is aser. However, shari surin sfeik sfeika is mutter. So it's basically 3 shitas, right? By sfeik sfeika. Does it apply to shari surin? Does it only apply to avodah zara that it's aser, or even by avodah zara? It's not a problem. Okay. All right. So he said that if you had the Isser that fell, this is Rav Shimon Shita, and then it fell into 3, which is interesting why it's 3, we'll see, and then it's removed from the 3, and it's mutter, because a sfeik sfeika, according to him, is mutter. Right? That's what the Shita of Rav Shimon is. That by he holds that shari surin is mutter. So, as we continue to Ayin Dal and Beis, so Ma'ishna Shloisha, the Ikaruba, Shnaim Nami Ikaruba. So, what does it mean 3, right? So, it fell into 3. Just let it say it fell into 2, and then it was removed, because even 2 is more than the 1, so why does it have to say 3? Why does it have to say that? So, my Gimel, the Katani Tarti Vahu. It really means really two, but it's including that one. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Eliezer. Well, what does that mean? So, not such a simple answer. Look at Rashi. Shmuel, Diyomer, Sveik, Sveika, Diabos Chachavim Aser. When he says it's Aser, Diyomer Rabbi Eliezer. He holds like the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer. Okay. Let's just see this whole Rashi. It's long, but it's a short daf. Dinan, Masechtas Avodah Zarah. Notol Himena Eitzim. Asur b'hana. So when you took wood, it's asur b'hana. Hesed b'hem hatanur, and let's say you fire it up in an oven. So chadash yutatz, yashan yutzan. If it's a new oven, so because what happens the very first time you use an oven, it hardens, and therefore you can't use the oven anymore. It has to be destroyed. If it's an old oven, so it's already been hardened, so all you're getting benefit is from the heat, so just wait till it cools down. Avabos a pas, let's say you want to bake bread in there, right? So asur b'hana, you can't eat that bread. Nis arba b'cheres asuras b'hana. And then let's say you did, so that bread's asur b'hana, let's say it got all mixed up, so it's still asur b'hana, and this is referring to Avodah Zarah. Now, Rabbi Eliezer says, you should take the hana and throw it in the sea. Alma, Yisle Rabbi Eliezer. What do we see? Because it says acheros v'acheros b'acheros. Yisle Rabbi Eliezer sveik avodas chachavim. So we see that Rabbi Eliezer taka holds sometimes with sveik avodas zara. The fact that it says acheros b'acheros. So we see that it could. It's the rest is mutter b'hana over there. So we do see that this actually applies. Loshen acher sabek Rabbi Eliezer a Rav Shimon koi. Diyomer meribul gimel v'tirutza my shloish tani trei behu. V'ibois ema gimel davka. Right, the ibois ema is really there's three. So and we said two should be enough. No, sabek Rabbi Eliezer diyomer la diyomer lu hit Rabbi Eliezer ela. Shnayim, 2 and 2. Hilkach binan del havi dalid. So you need to have 4 in there. Do ashkinu shnayim, and you'll take out 2, and varishin yoshev einai. Okay, so it's an interesting logic in Rashi. So it's really the Imoy Sam is going back on the first question. This question is like more of a flow. That you have to take out 2. So if it has to be 4. There's 3 then that one, so you have to take out 2. So that's what it's referring to. But the first shita is saying that he holds like we see like the shita of Rabbi Eliezer, that he matters for you to take the bread out and throw it into the Yam HaMelech. And that's by Sveika, even by Avodah Zarah. So we see by Rabbi Eliezer holds, right? We find that Rabbi Eliezer is of the opinion that when it comes to Sveika, it is mutter. Okay. All right, let's keep moving. Amrei Shlokish. Chavya shel truma. Okay, now we're going to eventually get to question 5. You have a barrel of truma, which is arba b'mei chavyas. And apparently those barrels are of chulin. Rashi says stumos, they're all closed up, and as Rashi also points out, chavya stumos is one of the 6 things, like rimoini badan, so too chavya stumos, they're now bottle. So v'nafel achas mehen liyam hamelech, and one of them fell into the sea. Hutter kulin. They're all mutter, which is kind of unbelievable because you would think that shouldn't work. But the Amrinan, because even though it's Asur B'Hana, because of this whole mixture problem of the Truma and this, Hach the Nafel, the Isur Nafel. Now it's interesting, we find that this seems to be quite similar to what we just talked about not too long ago in the beginning of today's daf, about when it comes to Avodah Zarah, the rings of Avodah Zarah. So, the question is, why does it need to mention that this din, if one is thrown into the Yam HaMelech, by the ring and by the chavya stumos, should be the same thing. Dim Rav Nachman, which is the case about the rings. Because maybe we're actually on some level more lenient. There's no way it could ever be mutter. You can't sell it to a Kohen, right? Say, here, a Zavodah Zarah, I can't use it. You Kohen use it. Obviously not. So the problem here is it's Truma. The problem is, it's actually, there's no Isra Hano over here. It's just that I'm a non-Kohen. I can't eat all of these. I can't drink these barrels because I may end up eating Truma, which I'm not allowed to do. But the truth is, I can always sell it to a Kohen, obviously at a monetary loss. It'll be a hefsid, but at the end of the day, it's not completely ibud. So therefore, maybe the only time we have this cool is by Avodah Zarah, because it would be a hefsid maruba, or total loss. Here, it wouldn't be a total loss to sell it to the Kohen. The shalakish chavias to minkra nefilasa. A huge barrel falls, you can tell the thing's missing, right? It's pretty big and much more obvious. But when it comes to a ring, you can't tell this small ring is missing. Okay, and for some reason that we'll have to understand the svara of why that matters, but that's the answer. Question 5. Okay, why do we need both of them? So in Rav Nachman having been a dafka chavim deno matirin mashkin truma. Vin Reish Lakish having been a dafka chavius, a barrel that's gone. Deminkra nefilasa. The fact that one of them is gone, it's like you could see, wow, this barrel is gone. But a ring, you can't. It's not as noticeable. So maybe we're not going to be as lenient if the ring flies out. Okay. Omer Rabba, lo hitter Reish Lakish. Now, Reish Lakish gave this interesting heter of these barrels, that one fell in to the Yam HaMelech, then all the other barrels are mutter. He only came up with this heter, el chavius de minkra nefilasa. Only again if it's recognizable that it fell. Avol te'ena loy. However, we're dealing with something which is small, like for example, a fig. And the loss is not recognizable. No, Rabbi Yosef Rafil Teina Kinefilasa Kachaliasa. So he says no, it doesn't make any difference. Also, when it comes to a fig, its falling is its count. Says Rashi Kashem Chetchilas Nefilasa B'Toicha Heter Nechsheves Be'enecha Aser Elu. Like, okay, it's small, but it's powerful enough to have aser them to begin with. So since it was powerful to cause problems, also when one of them is removed, so like choose. So it's interesting. We mentioned the stricha, but actually, according to the shita of Rabbi, Hitaka says that maybe Reish Lakish would disagree when it comes to the case of the tabas. It would be nice if we brought the case of the tabas. For some reason, we gave the case of te'ena, obviously because we're talking about food, because it's truma. But it's a question if maybe the same thing is by a tabas. Probably. Amr Rebbe Lezer, chavius shel truma shenafel b'kuf chavius. Again, we're talking about a barrel of truma, and it fell into 100 barrels. Now, since they are closed up, they are not bottled, but it's only considered to be a davar choshev only when they're closed. Poisech achas mehem. If you open one of the barrels, once it's open, now it takes upon itself the ability of bittul. It's only considered to be a davar choshev once it's closed. As it's closed, once the barrel is open, not anymore. So if it's open, v'noitel menu kedei dimua v'shaisa. You can take the amount of the potential mixture, and then you could drink, because there is no longer an issue of, again, this level of chashivas, because it's a barrel which is now open. So Yosef Rab Dimi v'karmel l'hashmaisa amalei Rab Nachman. So he said, and it's hard for me to read this word. Amalei Rab Nachman gam v'shasi kachazina hacha. This guy's like swallowing and drinking it is what we're seeing over here. Let's look at Rashi. De'im kain tepoisech achatchila. It sounds like you could just do this up front. Just open up the barrel and no problems. Hakaimel and chavius stumos. When we have closed barrels, the little batli heichem ishkachasla. Then how do you ever find a case of the din of closed barrels. Just always open up the barrels and drink. You'll never find a case where these barrels are not going to be bottle, because you can just open one up. It doesn't really seem to have any practical application. El Ema, what happened was niftacha achas mehen noitel him kadei dimua b'shaisa. If it happened to open, it's like ein mevatel isla chadchila. Like you can't do it on your own, and therefore that's why these cases actually would happen. But it's after the fact, if somehow, some way, the barrel of taka got open, so then that's a din. Let's say you have a barrel of truma which got mixed up with 150 barrels. The niftachu mehen, and 100 of them got opened. You can take out the prohibition amount and drink. Vishar asurin, but the rest of the closed wines, because only some of them are open, but the rest of the closed wines are still usher at shiftachula until it is open, until they're open. Lo amrin isur baruba isa. We don't say that the lo amrinan isur baruba isa. So let's look at Rashi. V'shar suros ad shiftachu. V'lo amrinan, we don't say yitoil achas min hakuf. Take one of the 100 barrels, the isura, ba'aruba isa, v'yehi hakol mutter, and the rest is mutter, v'yiftach ha'chamishim v'chatchila. In other words, as we said before, by the 40 and the 60, if 100, you have 150, so 100 of them were already opened up, and 50 of them are closed, well, then we probably would say out of the 100 that were taken out, probably the Isser, or the Truma, was in that 100, and therefore we should say that the 50 should be probably not the problem, so we don't say that, but rather, and therefore you can just open them up, no, you're not allowed to. Okay. And then the Mishnah said, Haroive v'hanirve, so let's go all the way back. So our Mishnah talked about situations, again, of mixtures, and we talked about numerous examples in which they were pasul lahakrava, but they're mutter lahedget. And one of the examples is haroiva v'hanirve, and even though you could ask, well, what are you talking about? Aren't those animals supposed to be destroyed? So the Mishnah said, al pi eid echad, or al pi balim, haroiva v'nirva. Okay, so that falls into that category as two. So there weren't two witnesses to substantiate this claim. So bishlam akuhu yadia. I understand all these cases. You can't tell which animal it is. Ella hai treifa hechidami. So it also mentions, so again, because you don't know which one it is, so therefore they're all aser, right? So that's what he said. So what do you have to do? You have to be yiru, you have to let it develop a blemish you have to let it graze until it develops a blemish, and then you would sell them, and then the value of the money for the most exceptional, most expensive animal, then you will use it moiso hamin. Because you have no idea to figuring out, because they're just a bunch of animals, right? So you don't know. So Gemara says, well, 1 second. I understand like an idol which was potentially sodomized, or a avodah zarah, or designated avodah zarah. You can't tell which one it was. There's all these animals. But el lahai treifa hechidam. Understand? If it's a treifa, you should be able to, with your eyes, be able to see which animal's a treifa. Then you could separate them, and that should be it. So iyad delay lesiv lishkele, right? If you can figure out which one it is, then take it out, and then there's no suffix anymore. If you have no idea, so how do you know that there's a treifa that's mixed in? Like, if it's a live animal, you know it's a treifa, so then take it out, because you could see. But if you don't know, then how do you know it's a treifa? And maybe none of the animals are a treifa. So, like, how do you understand this case? So, the Ariv Nikivas Akites, Bedrusas Hazev, that it got mixed up with a hole. There was a hole with a thorn by a zev, by a wild animal, by a wolf, that came and damaged it. So let's look at Rashi. Ve'ena nekuva chalol v'kshera umum nami uhavi dehader bari. It's not going to get healthy again, but it's not something which is recognizable because it didn't actually make some type of indentation. Drusas hazev treifa minesh ha'aris sorfa. So basically, it caused some type of venom or poison going into the animal. Vayodabe nekuva ladrusa. And it's hard to tell the difference to be able to see if this animal actually which animal it is. So in other words, it could be a situation where the animal there's definitely an animal that's a treifa, you know it's going to die, it got, let's say, bit by a snake or something, by a zev here, and that's it. The animal, let's say, fell off the roof. So if the animal fell off a roof, and you can't really figure out which animal it is. So nafula, nami liftika, I understand, if you see the animal, see if it could walk, if you can walk on its feet, right, then it's fine, right? So you should be able to distinguish when it comes to that. Now, Gemara says that ksavar amada sricha mesel ace. When it comes to just standing around, you have to wait 24 hours to be able to see what happens for a bedika. Halcha, if it walks, sricha bedika. If it walks, then you need to examine it. So what does that mean? So let's look at Rashi. Nafula, so ksavar, amda al ragleha, if it's able to stand on its feet, nafil hachi sricha me'esel ace. So if you have an animal that's able to stand on its own, it's not like lying down, like dying, you know it's a treifa, but it's able to get up on its feet, so you have to wait 24 hours. Even if it's moving and walking around, after you shech, you still have to examine it. So basically, the fact that it's walking around is not a bedika, does not prove anything necessarily. So the point is, there was an animal that fell off a roof, and not necessarily is it proof that the animal is not a treifa, just because it could walk around a little bit. You still have to be baidik after the shechita. The animal's alive, so they won't be able to know. That's the second answer. Rabbi Yomi Omer Kagoyin the Orav Bevlad Treifa. So interesting. So when it comes to a Vlad, a Treifa, you can know. But let's say it gave birth. So the din is that when it comes to a Vlad Treifa, is also Aser L'Hakarava. Rabbi Lezer the Omer Vlad Treifa Lo Karav L'Gam Mizbeach, which is apparently not everyone holds like this shita, but that's the shita of Rabbi Eliezer. So Kulak Rabbi Yanai Log Amri, why don't they say the sheet of the first answer about the wolf attacking? The wolf attacking. Lo Amri bein the kuvas akayitz la derusa sazev midiyadahu humashach. Right? You could see because there'll be a hole from the wolf that will pull the animal. The high ogul, and the thorn will be round. So basically, the shape is going to be quite different. So if it's just like a small little cut versus from a wolf, so then you can just make a clear distinction. You'll be able to see. It says Rashi, derusas hazei moshuch hanekev veinu ogul. It's not circular. So therefore, you would be able to determine that. Vahai ogul. No, if the animal stands up, that's good enough. You don't have to you don't have to wait anymore. So if this animal's standing up, you know it's not a treifa. Halachan, if it's walking around, in sricha b'dika. You don't have to do anything after the shechita. You know it's not a treifa. According to this sheet, which again not everyone holds, because this is a das yachid, not everyone holds this din that the vlad treifa also cannot be makriv l'gam mizbeach. Some say it could, and therefore it wouldn't be able to fall into this category of our Mishnah. Okay, we'll stop there. Let's look at question 6. Heichi mishkachas la treifish nis ariv vlo nikeres betrefasa. How can you not figure out it's a trefa? So let's say it got mixed up with Drusa Zev, the attack of a wolf, which is, according to this shita, is hard to tell the difference between that and a hole of a thorn. Or nisarva nafula de boy badika, an animal that fell off a roof, and it'll be puzzle because hakrivo nolif liv chasecha. I guess Rashi must have quoted that somewhere. And the third answer is that it got mixed up with Vlad Trefa, which again is according to that one shita, which is a das yachid. Okay, let's maybe see another question. TA 24. Chavya shel trum, which is arba b'meya v'chamishim chavyos v'niftachu meya mahadin hachavyos. Okay, so we just saw this. This is ayin dal mabez. So when it comes to the 100, all we do is take out one kedei demua, and then the rest are mutter. However, the other 50 are aser, as they're closed. And it says in parentheses, Oman di'amar isura b'roiv isa gam ha'chamishim mitaros. Oman di'amar isura b'roiv isa gam ha'chamishim mitaros. Right, because some will say that, like we said before, about the 60 and the 40, then once the 100 is taken out, so then the other 50 should automatically be mutter. Okay, let's just see this inside. Let's find this. Okay, Chavya shel truma, shnis arba b'meya v'chamishim chavyas v'nivdachu meya mehen noitel himenu kedei demua v'shaisa v'shar isurin. Okay, so that is TA 24. Let's see if there's a question on TB 27. Chavya shel truma shnis arba b'meya. Let's see what I wrote. Exactly the same question. That's TB 27. Let's just mark that down. So I wrote B'meya noitel rakmin hashir shel truma b'damoy, which is mixed. V'shar mutter v'chamishim aser. Then I wrote in parentheses. V'yishman di'amar shegam ein iser b'chamishim el oisin es hatakana gam be'elu chavyois. Not bad. Adkan.